Now, would you please welcome to the stage Oregon State Representative Teresa Alonso Leon.
Buenas noches. This is going to be an interactive speech. So when I say buenas noches, you say? That means good evening for those of you who don't speak Spanish. I want to thank you so much for having me here tonight. My name is Teresa Alonso Leon. Thank you. And I am the state representative for House District 22, which includes Woodburn, Jervis, Brooks, and North Salem. I grew up as a daughter of migrant farm workers, the oldest of 5. I was responsible for helping care for my siblings, and I often acted as an interpreter and translator. This was to help my parents. I helped them purchase their first home. I translated for them at the doctor's office and dealt with everyday challenges that non-English speakers face. I was committed to schoolwork, and I eventually became the first person in my family to go to college. But growing up, there was no one in government who looked like me and who I could look up to. That is one of the reasons I am so honored to be here this evening and to have the pleasure to introduce former Secretary of Housing and Urban Development, Julián Castro. I have to admit something. When I first heard that former Secretary Castro was going to be joining the Wayne Morse Gala, I knew I couldn't miss this event. Little starstruck. He's one of the leaders that today's young people could aspire to. And he represents the future and the trajectory of our party and of our nation. Julián Castro understands the values of Oregon Democrats. Like us, he knows that everyone who calls this place home deserves their fair shot at an American dream. A dream that includes access to work, access to health care, access to education, and affordable housing. He knows that we need strong, diverse, progressive leaders to move our state and our nation forward. In Salem, we're fighting back against the Trump administration. Yes. Just this past February, we took multiple steps to push back on the harmful racist policies of the federal administration. We fought to protect Oregon dreamers. Dreamers like Mario Palafox. Dreamers like Aldo Sedano. They are here tonight. Gentlemen, please stand up. Future legislators, everyone. We fought to give dreamers like Mario Ronaldo an opportunity to get an affordable education and help them keep their driver's license. We have worked tirelessly to protect Oregon families from ICE and keep those families' private information private. But the fight is not over yet. We will continue to push for affordable housing, access to health care, and maintain our voting rights, even as Republicans here and across the nation threaten to take those rights away. We need leaders to keep up with this fight against the dark vision that Republicans have for our country. We need leaders at the city, county, and state and national level, leaders like Julián Castro. Former Secretary Castro was born and raised in San Antonio, Texas. He was first elected to public office in 2001, when at the age of 26, he won election to the San Antonio City Council. In 2009, he became mayor of San Antonio, where he brought a strong focus to improving educational achievement and making San Antonio a leader in the 21st century global economy. In 2014, President Barack Obama named Castro the 16th Secretary of Housing and Urban Development. At HUD, he led progress at the department that earned recognition as one of the most improved federal agencies. Unlike our current HUD Secretary, Ben Carson, Secretary Castro fought for low-income families, recognizing that everyone deserves a roof over their head and a place to call home. Former Secretary Castro, I want to thank you personally for your service to your city, state, and nation. Here in Oregon, we know that representation matters, and that having strong Democratic leaders who truly represent their communities is the only way forward. And I, along many others, are so inspired by your work and your leadership. In a time when it is lacking in our nation, you stand for equity. You stand for compassion. You stand for giving everyone a fair shot. You stand for all of us. Oregon Democrats, please give a warm welcome to former United States Secretary of Housing and Urban Development, Julián Castro.
Thank you. Thank you very much. Good evening. Well, first of all, let me say a huge thank you, gracias, to Representative Alonso Leon for the very kind introduction, but more importantly, as I told you, Teresa, earlier, for being a trailblazer, being a role model, for making history, and for fighting the good fight for folks who need great representation in Oregon. Thank you so much for doing that. And also, thank you for getting the introduction right. As many of y'all know, I have a twin brother, Joaquin. Somebody told me that they just saw Joaquin on MSNBC or CNN. He's on the House Intelligence Committee. So you can imagine that he's pretty busy these days. I tell him that I see him more on CNN and MSNBC than I do in person. And Joaquin likes to go around and tell people that the way to tell us apart is that I'm a minute uglier than he is. When I was in DC, I used to tell people that the real way to tell us apart was that he's in a Republican-controlled Congress there, so we both live in Washington, D.C., but I'm the only one that actually worked in Washington, D.C. But don't worry, come January of 19, we're going to change all that. Congress is going to work again. I want to thank your party chair, Gene Atkins, for the energy, the vitality, and the vision that you've brought to the Oregon Democratic Party. You got one of the best right here, and Gene, congratulations on everything that you're doing. And to your senator, I think that he may have had to leave, but I had the opportunity as HUD secretary, as y'all can imagine, to work with a whole range of senators. And in both Senator Wyden and Senator Merkley, y'all have two of the best senators, the biggest champions for everyday Americans that are out there. I was telling some folks earlier that, you know, we'll trade you Cruz and Cornyn for Wyden and Merkley. Although I have a feeling that y'all won't take that trade. We are going to have a new senator from Texas, Beto O'Rourke, come January. So we may have to revisit that proposition. To all of the elected officials who are here for your representation, your leadership, especially our state elected officials and our local elected officials, one of the things that's very clear these days is that now more than ever we need you. Now when the federal government, when Washington, D.C. Is going in the wrong direction with bad leadership, with no vision, you provide the vision, you provide the leadership, you're taking us in the right direction here in Oregon. Thank you, Democrats, for what you're doing. To our friends in labor, gracias. Thank you for your representation. Whether it's paid sick leave or raising the minimum wage, making sure that we have safe working conditions, stamping out discrimination and harassment in the workplace, our unions are leading the way. Thank you for doing that. And finally, to tonight's honorees for everything that they have done to make this a better state, to improve the quality of life, and to strengthen the Democratic Party of Oregon into one of the strongest in the United States. Thank y'all. I'm happy to be here in Portland. When I was HUD secretary, I had the chance to visit 100 different communities in 39 different states. And when I think of this community that we're in, I know that this is only one part of your state, but when I think of this host community in Portland, I think of a community that is going to help define America's progress in the 21st century. If you think about it, throughout our nation's history, there are cities that we associate with a certain era. We think about New York, we think about Chicago, we think about the late 20th century in cities like Los Angeles. Well, I'm convinced that when the history of this 21st century is written, Portland is going to be one of those leading cities. And y'all are doing fantastic work because of, across the state, because of great elected officials. I know I want to give a shout out to your Attorney General, of course. And also to our great Speaker of the House, Tina Kotek. Tina and I served together. We were fellows in a fellowship program a few years ago, and all of us in the fellowship program recognized instantly her leadership. And Tina, I know that there were many folks that were involved in this, but congratulations on Measure 101 and what it's going to mean, and your leadership on that measure. So I come from a long line of proud Texas Democrats like Barbara Jordan and LBJ and Governor Ann Richards. My brother Joaquin and I grew up on the west side of San Antonio with my mother and with my grandmother. And my grandmother had come from Mexico when she was 6 or 7 years old in 1922. She came because her parents had passed away around the time of the Mexican Revolution. And she and her younger sister, their nearest relatives, were in San Antonio. And so they were brought through Eagle Pass, Texas, and settled there in the west side of the city in San Antonio. And they yanked my grandmother out of school before she could finish elementary. And because she had no formal education, she worked her entire life as a maid, a cook, and a babysitter. She raised my mother, who was her only daughter, as a single parent. And my mother raised my brother Joaquin and me as a single parent after the age of 8. We went to the public schools of the city, and I can remember 26 years ago now, on April 3rd, 1992, running out with my brother to the mailbox of our house because we had been applying to colleges. We'd gotten the U.S. News and World Report rankings, you know, the rankings they make of the different universities, and gotten fee waivers so that we could apply. And that Friday, we ran out to the mailbox and we got these 2 packets. And y'all can remember that when you're applying to college, you wanted to get a packet and not a letter, because if you got a letter, it was probably a thanks but no thanks. We brought the packets into the house and we ripped them open, and the letter inside said, "Congratulations and welcome to the Stanford class of 1996. And I tell folks all the time that I wish back then that I had one of the cell phone cameras that we have now, so that I could have taken a picture or video of my grandmother's face. Because she never could have imagined that kind of opportunity for herself, for my mom, or even for Joaquin and me. I remember that day, everybody was so happy. It was one of those moments that you have in life where you know that your American dream is coming true and that things are going to be better. And then 2 weeks later, we got the bill. And that wasn't such a happy day. At the time, that university cost between $27,000 and $28,000 per person per year. And my mother had made about just under $20,000 that year that we applied, and my grandmother was getting a few $100s every month in a Social Security check. And so there was no way that these 2 women who had worked hard their entire lives, that they could afford that kind of opportunity for Joaquin and me. The only reason that I can stand here with the education and the opportunity that I've had in life is, of course, because I worked hard and my family worked hard, but also because there were Pell Grants and Perkins loans and federal work study. Because America worked hard for me and for my family. And I'm convinced that this nation has been at its greatest when it expects that kind of hard work, but then when it rewards it with meaningful opportunity in life. And that's what we've always been about as Democrats. That was FDR and the GI Bill. It was President Johnson and Medicare and Medicaid, and it was Barack Obama passing the Affordable Care Act so that more than 90% of Americans could have health care. And the thing is that America that we know works, that formula is not just about the past, but it's more important than ever today. A few weeks ago, I was in San Francisco in a hotel, and y'all know these new elevators that they have those screens where you can kind of watch newscasts, like it looks like a cheap version of CNN or something. And there was a crawl that said that it was Republic Day in India. And I remembered that 5 years earlier, as mayor of San Antonio, I had been in Chennai, India, which is one of our sister cities. And while we were watching the military parade go by, one of the government officials told me that there were 400 different engineering programs in the state of Tamil Nadu alone. Today, the United States finds itself in an unprecedented competition for investment and jobs and opportunity against nations around the world that are rising, that are producing tons and tons of young people with the talent, the intelligence, the creativity, the ambition to spawn the companies and the ideas that are going to define progress and prosperity in the years to come. We live in a 21st century in which brain power is truly the new currency of success. In this world, to compete, the United States doesn't have a single person to waste. We need everybody's talent if we're going to prosper in the years to come. And the problem with our friends on the other side of the aisle is that they don't have a vision for the future. The only thing they have are more tax cuts for the super wealthy and for corporations. The only thing they have to offer are more ethics problems. The only thing they have to offer is more scapegoating of the poor and of immigrants. The only thing that they have to offer is a cozy insider club of folks who think alike and want to be exclusive instead of inclusive. But we know better than that. As Democrats, we have a positive vision for the future. Sometimes on TV, you hear pundits say that we don't know what we stand for. We do. Democrats have always stood for expanding opportunity to every single American, no matter what you look like or where you come from or what your last name is, whether you're a man or a woman, no matter your gender identity or sexual orientation or the color of your skin. And that's why, as we move toward a future that demands more from us, we need to expand healthcare so that everybody can get covered. We need to make pre-K universal so that everybody gets a great start in life. We need to ensure that teachers are paid what they deserve. We need to make college and higher education accessible and affordable to every single person that wants to get it. We need to pass a DREAM Act right now to unleash the potential of 800,000 folks that could benefit. We need to reform our criminal justice system and stop the unnecessarily brutalizing of people of color in America. We need to stamp out sexual harassment in the workplace and make sure that women are paid equal for what they do. But the thing is that, we can only do these things if we work together instead of apart. One of the most disappointing things about the last 15 months has been watching a president that is so divisive, that even at moments that give him the opportunity to bring the country together, even in moments where Democrats might admit that there's some common ground that we could find, instead of moving toward unity, he moves toward division, toward ripping us apart, toward drawing sides apart from each other instead of together. I grew up with a mother who was very involved in the community. She was part of the old Chicano movement of the late 1960s and early 1970s. She was very active on women's empowerment and different Hispanic issues over the years as I grew up and my brother grew up. And my mom was quite a character. She used to have a little placard in her office when I was a kid that said, It was a little cartoon, and it said, "God is coming back, and boy, is she pissed." She's always carried a red purse to symbolize women's pay equity. And from time to time, over the years, she would drag my brother Joaquin and me when we were growing up to different meetings and rallies and speeches. And if you had asked me when I was a teenager, did I ever think that I would go into politics, I would have said not just no, but hell no. Because I thought that it was very boring and I didn't see the point. But when we were 16, we were involved in this campaign to try and elect only the second female mayor in San Antonio, and she would have been the first Latina. And on May 4th, 1991, in the first round of the election, we had gone to her election night celebration, and she was ahead in the election. She didn't end up winning, but that night everybody was happy, and it must have been about 11 o'clock or so. My brother, my mom, and me walked out of the event at one of the downtown hotels, and we walked out onto the sidewalk and past this bus stop. And at the bus stop, there was a young mother there with her 2 kids. They were waiting for the bus. And we had our shirts on for the campaign. And the woman said to us, "Did we win?" And by the way she said it, I know that she didn't just mean, "Did y'all win?" I could see and hear in her voice that what she meant was, "Did all of us win?" I remember that moment because I've always thought that for those of us in public service, that we should always strive to make sure that everybody feels like when we win, you win, that we all win together. And I can't think of a time when we need that more in our country than now. When we feel when we often feel like it's getting harder and harder to come together, to summon a common national identity and purpose in the service of truly great things. The thing is that that's been the history of our country, and I'm confident that we can have that again. And so I came tonight for 2 reasons. The first is I came here to thank you. There's so many folks in this room that have dedicated 10, 20, 30, 40 years of activism in the Democratic Party. I bet that we could keep going for some of y'all. Y'all have been the ones over the years that have been at the office, at the headquarters, making the phone calls. You've lit the envelopes. You've been the ones that stayed up late at night on the night before the election. Been the ones at the polling places handing out literature. You've been the ones scrambling around to go buy the food at the grocery store before the meeting, or baking something, or lending money to others so that they could. Y'all have been the backbone of progress in this state, and for some of y'all in this nation. Thank you for that. I know that it's made a difference. I can tell you that as a Texan, I gladly trade places for the politics that you have here. But you know, if Wayne Morse stood for something, it was that we should stand up for what we believe in. And I came here tonight as well to challenge you to keep going. You see what I see out there, of folks who are trying to divide us more than ever, of people with no vision and no ethics, hailed as leaders, of folks who want to narrow the scope of opportunity to people that just look like them or think like them. Folks who want to ban certain people from our country just because of who they worship. Too many folks that are so short-sighted that they can't see what's happening to our planet and aren't willing to save it for the next generation. The notion of politics and public service, I don't think have ever been further apart than with this crowd. So I came here to challenge you May 15th and then especially toward November to keep going. And I know sometimes that gets hard. That I bet some of y'all, you wonder, you've been doing it so long, like what in the world am I still doing here? Right? When you get one of those fundraising emails near the end of the cycle that makes it seem like the sky is going to fall apart if you don't just send $100. Or you get another phone call asking if you'll go volunteer. Or you're the one calling and your friends won't answer their phone anymore because they know what you're calling about. Or you get defriended on Facebook or blocked on Twitter for being too political. Or you go block walking and you knock on the door. Nobody answers. Then you knock again. And nobody answers, but through the corner of your eye, you see the curtains move. And they know you're there, and you know they're there, but has anybody had that happen to them? Then y'all are the true campaigners out there. I know that it can get hard during those moments. But you know, I saw a story very recently, and just briefly, that reminded me of why we do this, of a young man named Michael Brown from my home state of Texas. Mike was a high school senior, a young African American from a family of modest means, very sharp, near the top of his class, had gone to the public schools. He applied to all 20 of the top universities in the country, and he got into every single one. And he got a full ride to every single one of those universities. That is the America that we're fighting for, where opportunity knows no bounds when folks are willing to work for it. And so I hope that in those moments when you ask, what in the world am I doing here, you'll remember that if you feel like me, you know that you too have been blessed in life with tremendous opportunity. That you know that we already live in the greatest nation in the world, but that through our efforts, we can make it even better for even more people. And so I look forward on election night on November 6th to being back at home in San Antonio and watching on CNN and ABC and CBS, MSNBC, and Univision. I'll probably have like 6 or 7 different tabs open on the internet, you know, following the county and the statewide clerk's offices. I can't wait until they announce that y'all have a supermajority here in Salem, that you have defeated Walden and taken back the 2nd Congressional District, that the Democrats have taken back the House and the Senate of the United States, and then that 2 years later, that we say we have new leadership and that Oregon's 7 electoral votes are going to the Democratic nominee and new president of the United States, and we can dump Donald Trump and head for a brighter future of our country. Thank you very much. Thank you very much.